Say what up, what up, what up? It's your brother VJ.
Takeza.
And it's yet another installment of one of these headspace super duper hip hop conversations. Today we're talking about something slightly contentious, but nevertheless a very controversial and popular discussion. We're talking about hip hop versus Kwaito.
Yeah.
Right?
Is it dope versus Kwaito?
See, this is what we're beginning to uncover, Takeza. Our understanding of this supposed beef stems back to the controversial joint yayisenziwa ngumzegezeke aka DJ Sbu called Amakoporosh. Now Amakoporosh was a track which I felt exploited the tension that was there in the location. You know, Ekasi, South Africa has a classical aesthetic. You know, you think of the South African, you think of the Brentwood, the Pamza, the All-Star, the Dickies, you know, the Samson two-piece. There's a certain kind of aesthetic that came because of the way that the socio-political environment came. You know, the culture of mining, the weather of the people, the languages, the colors, all this expresses how people dress. And in South Africa, most Amakhutman were the pantsulo. That was the aesthetic. That's how you move. You know, that's how you spoke. Yeah. So a lot of the time, that's the South African style we grew up in. And I think as our country became more globalized and we started to filter in influences from the rest of the world, from TV and radio, a lot of young black kids was looking at another way of dressing, and it was because they were seeing people who looked like them, moving in a certain kind of way, talking in a certain kind of way. So I think this tendency to kind of emulate Africans in the Americas came naturally to young kids in the early 80s and 90s because, man, there was just something undeniably cool about Afro-Americans. You know, when you see them standing in the corner with their puffy jackets, the Tims, you know, the classic hip-hop aesthetic. Even if we're going to the early 80s aesthetic of the Adidas two-piece tracksuit and the shell toe, you know, and we're going to the Kangol hats, which are back in fashion now. A lot of people don't realize that the moment the doors of the world opened up and young black kids in South Africa saw another image, some of them had the bravery to start choosing a Kangol hat instead of a Dickies Panama, choosing Timberlands instead of Chuck Taylors or whatever. And I guess once you were one of those people who started to do that and even try to change your walk, you know, and start talking in a certain kind of way.
Know what I'm saying?
Because, you know what I mean? Because of influence, it annoyed certain people. And I use the word annoyed because I think it annoyed them mainly because it came from a defensive place. They felt like you were denying your own identity. See, this is where this is where the misunderstanding begins. And I think a lot of us were taught to misinterpret this kind of misunderstanding as a beef. But to be frank with you, I really think there was never a hip-hop versus Kwaito beef because Africans have always been in conversation with each other. We all know that these people are Africans. They were taken from this continent and they were taken to foreign lands as labor, as tools to build an oppressive white imperialist system. And I think what history has taught us is that when they came to those lands, they tried to find ways of connecting with their roots. Jazz was a way of that. Rock and roll was a way of that. And hip-hop later became a way of that. So even in Africa, our rhythms, we've always been people of rhythm, people of sound, people of word, people of power, poetry, rhythm and poetry, which is what rap is, R-A-P, rhythm and poetry, is in the bloodline of African people. Imbongi, the griot. Our custom as a people is to preserve our traditions, to talk about the good and the bad of our societies in this kind of oral poetry. So I think that African Americans understand the power of that, and it's always been a conversation till this day.
So what you're saying is, I get what you're saying. Is that actually rap was way before hip hop.
That's facts.
Because we're telling Mbongi now.
That's
Mbongi, that's African. That's African. Yeah,
that's facts.
So kudala warecho. Before we know historically hip hop started in the Bronx in the 70s and all, but Mbongi
rap predates hip hop. the custom and the culture of rhythm and poetry is way older than the expression of b-boying, of DJing, of graffiti writers.
Yeah.
That was a contemporary expression of an age-old art form, and this is why a lot of scholars have done that kind of mirror work and drawn the parallels to say, yo, actually a graph writer is the contemporary version of a person going inside the caves, you know, doing that art and preserving preserving culture and tradition. You know, a b-boy is a contemporary version of people dancing around this fire, people moving, people being rhythmic, people testing the limits and flexibility of their bodies, a kind of half athleticism, half entertainment. This has always been there in indigenous culture and African culture in particular.
And funny enough, Uzabs has a track that actually speaks about that.
Yeah.
It's called The Fire Song on his second album. But the name of the song is Fire Song, where he details about how hip hop actually started. Or if you talk about rap and go in a cave and Africa.
A story is not the literal account of what happens. It's the symbolic account of meaning. So really, when you want to start the story of hip-hop based on what hip-hop means to you, if what hip-hop means to you is a money-making scheme, you'll obviously be limited to the perspective that rap began in the Bronx, because all you see is the opportunity to make money with hip-hop as a format right now. But if you're interested in finding out about the custom in and of itself, you'll understand that the meaning of rhythm and poetry goes way beyond that, and that rappers have existed since the Neolithic times. This is how we've been telling our stories. So going back to this whole hip-hop versus Kwaito, the versus element was added by, I feel, industry pressure to create a gimmick which would be entertaining for people to be lured into. Because Gagate, there's this kind of resting annoyance that certain people have with the Americanized aesthetic, and through Mzegezege they found an artist who spoke a lot of these annoyances to power. But if we're really being honest, even the ones who were annoyed to the point of just really being irritated had a certain kind of admiration for those who practice this thing. Because Isbindi. And you know, Isbindi, guts takes a lot of courage, you know. And
imagine you this guy, play area yako, everyone is rocking chucks, amadikis, when teams wena. And it's ending with December, ushushu my bra, you out the Air Force One,
and people think you literally lost your mind. You think they've literally, and flash forward to today where Tim's basketball sneakers and the whole culture around the American and the Afro-American lifestyle in particular has become popular. We're in a generation that now, thank goodness, has embraced the conversation of Africans globally around the world. It's a pity, or maybe not, just the way that life flows sometimes. That in the 90s there was this kind of, I call it an aesthetic friction. It's something as simple as one day, you know, your son or somebody decides to rock up wearing a dress. As a father, it's going to disturb you. Because you would want your son to wear pants. So if your son decided that he's really into dresses, you're gonna have a problem with it. But are you not gonna love him as your son?
Obviously gonna love him.
I feel like that's kind of the core of what was going on. People in the township have always loved hip hop. They've always been influenced by, I mean, come on, in the 90s and the early 80s, what else could you listen to? If you weren't listening to gospel, to Maskandi, or to Kwaito, you were listening to hip hop. This was the kind of scope of sound that we had to feed from. So I think anybody living in the township who says they don't even have one hip hop song that they like is lying to themselves and lying to everybody else, because we've all seen the Tupac murals, the Biggie murals in the hood. We've all seen the t-shirts. We've all felt the power of how rappers have influenced Ikasi. So there's never been
so
a beef. Really,
and also if you check and if you also check the similarities of how these two, you could say, genres or two cultures were started, they're similar. The similarities. hip hop started inner city, Bronx, abantu bengena Nicks, Fokol, and then from the sonic side they took records and batata from records, whether it's jazz or not, batata only break beats, and they made, you know, and then when you come to Kwaito, it's still the same thing. They took disco tracks and slowed them down, which is what we in the early 90s mid-tempo, they were singing to mid-tempo beats,
right?
Which is when you listen to those tracks, it's actually disco tracks that were close to tempo.
A lot of the original Kwaito songs even still have the original versions available for people to check that out. But that's another episode altogether. But really, that's a major important point, because again, it's always been a conversation amongst Africans, the Africans who were taken and the Africans who remained. And I think hip hop, more than anything, is an expression of that. It's a conversation. So for any young person who really doesn't fully understand the depth of the history watching this episode, I would love for what they get out of it to be that. That our young people understand the value of appreciating elements of where they come from, because we don't get that message a lot. We don't know, we don't realize rather, that African Americans, Africans in the UK and in all other parts of the Western world really look at young Africans living their best lives on the continent, and they want to know and feel a little bit of that. What is it to be a contemporary young African person living in today's times? So we are the only ones that can tell that story through the hip hop, through the house, through whatever you're making, whether it's piano, but particularly to our heads. This is an installment, this is an episode that's really about understanding that this conversation is going to be fruitful if we have something to give. And over the past years, Takeza, what I've noticed is that we've kind of remained silent and allowed the Western space, Africans in the other parts of the world, to inform our fashion, to inform our music styles, to inform our whole identity. And I feel like in South Africa, there's been a lack of real authenticity. So
you know that A word.
You know what it is? I'm always going to be talking about it. So without sounding like an old head who's whining about the good old days, it really is a valid point to make over and over again, that however you are making and shifting your identity, all we're saying is the headspace is that your authenticity, feeding from where you come from first and foremost, is going to help you in the long run, because nobody has a unique combination of the things which
what made Kwaito unique.
You know what I mean? And as a result, Kwaito took from rap. Like we said, rap predates hip hop. So as a result, we could rap on anything. Give an African a house beat, give an African a classical, notation, give an African
anything.
Even Maskandi artists go through the whole routine. Almost do that. Tell me that isn't rap. Tell me Puzi Kemi's ain't spitting bars.
He's spitting bars.
He's spitting bars.
That's rap.
That's rap. Really?
So now many colors and people are rapping on piano beats. They're rapping,
They've been rapping.
They've been rapping on any beat.
Exactly. So I think to really tie it off and to conclude, Tageza, one, there's never been a hip-hop versus Kwaito beef. It was created by the industry, exploiting small little issues we had with the global aesthetic, an aesthetic that was never a criminal thing for kids to be influenced by. It's natural to be influenced by other parts of the world, as long as you make all that make sense according to where you are. Because at the end of the day, there is one point that they have right, Asimu States. And because we are not in the United States of America, it's important to take the Americanisms you learn, the Britishisms, whatever, that you learn. Whatever you learn, take that, make it yours, and do it in a way, spin it in a way where you're not trying to be that, but you've learned how to take the best of that to you, and you do it in your own way.
And moving further, before Gesivale, just to touch on with Kwaito artists, because Kwaito artists, they were even in stories, they were actually rappers.
No doubt.
They were rapping, and then some, whether it's record exec or like John Fit, I used to so that
True thing.
So, hey man,
True
rap,
things.
yeah.
There's been this common story that South Africans didn't listen to hip hop in the 90s. Lie.
That's a lie.
We all listened to hip hop. We all loved hip hop. A lot of people picked up rapping, and a lot of people wanted to do it in that American way. And maybe, like you said, it might have been industry pressure. It might have been their own reflective decision to say, you know what? Instead of flipping this verse in English, when you flipping a sound, you know,
Yeah.
you know, let me speak the slang of my streets. So I think those are very important reflections, and they brought us this far, the case.
Which is the question is, on our boat series, should we have
See, now you're touching on an important issue.
yeah, shouldn't we have an episode
That's the question.
where we have the greatest?
For me,
yeah,
easily,
Kwaito.
hands down, there are an amazing list of MCs. I said it, MCs who rapped in the context of Kwaito. So you best believe that in my South African top 5, I got a lot of names, and maybe I won't be revealing any of them because
Makes me think about this other episode I was watching, Masterclass or Rashid K, where he was like, Kwaito, your so-called Kwaito artists who could actually rap were rappers, so they were not hip-hop because they weren't doing multi-syllable. I don't know if you can multi-syllable, it determines about we hip-hop.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't know. Like we've always said in the headspace, rap, rhythm and poetry was born from entertaining the crowd. Before you even think you have technical complexity, like in terms of writing to a certain kind of metric, rhythm and whatnot, the double entendres, you don't have to be inherently complex, but the one thing you do have to do is be able to make people groove. And if you gave most people a choice between Mdu on the other side and Hemphatic Tabs, I know who's rocking the party there. So
obviously.
So if Mdu is rocking the party for most people and Tabs is rocking the party for a niche, and the original definition of an MC is to move the crowd, who's moving the biggest crowd? Mdu or Tabs? And if Mdu's moving the crowd, why isn't Mdu an MC?
Okay. Okay, in conclusion, I
think Sivali, with that cliffhanger, we hopefully got our subscribers and our people listening.
Yeah.
That's a question. We're throwing it up to you. Answer us. Why aren't you including a whole lot of ill Kwaito artists in your list of MCs? This is the Headspace.
Peace.